my friends. Welcome back to Antiwar Radio on Chaos 92.7 FM in Austin, Texas. We're streaming live worldwide on the internet at chaosradioaustin.org, antiwar.com/radio, and for the first hour all week, focusing on the economic crisis with the experts from the Austrian school, we're streaming from the Campaign for Liberty, Ron Paul's new website, and he is our first guest on the show today. You all know Dr. Paul. As Anthony Gregory says, he makes James Madison look like Alexander Hamilton. Best congressman we've ever had. I'm not going to lie about my bias. He's a medical doctor, not a lawyer. That's probably part of the reason right there. Former presidential candidate. He's the author of Pillars of Prosperity, Freedom Under Siege, The Case for Gold, Gold, Peace, and Prosperity, Mises and Austrian Economics, A Foreign Policy of Freedom, and the new one, and my favorite, the Freedom Manifesto. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
It's good to talk to you again. So, let's get right to it. Right there on Capitol Hill, it seems like the powers that be are doing everything they can to push through this bailout bill. Is it a done deal?
Well, they claim not, and that they're still working on it, but there's a lot of politics going on, as usual. The Democrats, of course, want welfare for their group of people. We got welfare for the rich, so they'll have to get some welfare for the poor. But I think McCain has muddied the waters because he came over here and the Democrats saw this as a good chance to play political games. So instead of allowing it to go forward, my interpretation is that they probably purposely slowed it up. And I think as soon as he leaves town, they'll probably have an agreement if he ends up going down there for the debate. So that's the kind of thing that gets involved. First, it's serving as many special interests as you can, and then also getting involved in partisan politics.
Mm-hmm. Well, the special interest thing must really play into it besides just the bankers who are being bailed out, the obvious targets of this. All the news reports say that the switchboards are just lit up, that the American people, at least the ones interested enough to call Congress about it, are as angry as they can be and are adamantly opposed. So I guess they've got to figure out a way to pay off 435 different little districts in different ways in order to get these votes lined up, huh?
Yep, that's what they'll have to do, and do some arm twisting and promises. The bill won't have everything in that, it won't be overly apparent, but it may be future promises and things like that. So there'll be a lot of activity between now and probably Sunday evening. It may well go into Sunday before they pass something.
Mm-hmm. And now, the Treasury and the Federal Reserve, my understanding, they've already given up $700 billion of American taxpayer money for this. Why are they even bothering coming to you guys in the first place? Why do they need a law passed if they can do anything?
That's a pretty good question. I don't have the absolute answer to that because, you can go to the Fed and they can borrow unlimited amounts, and they buy up so many assets, and they did use up, extended about $700 billion worth already. It might be just that old saying about pushing on a string. There's a limit to how much more borrowing that banks want to do because they might not want to borrow anymore and have borrowing on the books as much as they just want flat out somebody buying these things. And maybe they just quit even taking loans from the Federal Reserve. But, there are some good banks, especially the small banks are calling in, and they don't like it. They say, why don't you just punish the people who got us into trouble? Why should you punish everybody? And the small solvent banks shouldn't be penalized.
I have this Bloomberg article here that says that the FDIC has a secret list and that they're afraid to release it because it'll cause more panic.
Well, I guess if your bank's on the list, it would make you worried. I'm not usually one to say don't sweat things too much, but in many ways, that isn't the problem. It isn't the problem that, if your bank closes for a day, you're going to get the money out. The big problem is getting money that has any value or exactly when you want it. Social Security, as this economy unwinds, Social Security beneficiaries are always going to get their checks, and the checks are going to gradually increase, but they'll never keep up with the cost of living. So it's the value of money that we're dealing with. And every time they prop up this system of bad debt, bad investments, what they're doing is diluting the value of the dollar, and they just can't keep up with that.
Well, I learned watching the president's speech the other night that the cause of this is those darn foreigners, apparently in a plot to destroy us, have invested a lot of money in our economy.
Yeah, we got to check into that. It's always the Chinese fault or somebody else. They work hard, sell us goods, we give them paper money, and they save, and then they start buying stuff up. And the embarrassing thing is they actually are our banker and act more like capitalists than we do. I mean, we act like the aggressors, and the Chinese are over there buying up assets and participating in investments in Iran. We're over there trying to start a war with them. So there's quite a difference in approach. It's hard to believe that we've gotten ourselves into this mess.
Mm-hmm. You know, we saw the dot-com bubble in the 90s, and then as it's been explained to me by some of your colleagues in Austrian school, what happened was instead of letting there be a recession when the NASDAQ bubble popped, they kept inflating and they created a new bubble in housing instead. And I just wonder, is there such a thing as a war bubble? Is it the money that's being spent on the war that's then turning around and going into the housing, or are these separate issues?
Well, I think they're connected. I think they're all one thing. It's a dollar bubble, and we increase the amount of dollars we have to pay for the welfare here at home, the military-industrial complex, for all the activity we do overseas. But, you know, it's not like Osama bin Laden didn't warn us. I mean, he was pretty clear on what he wanted to do. He wanted to bleed us. He wanted to drag us out there and spread us around the world and dilute our military strength and then wreck our economy and bankrupt us. I mean, he even stated this. And so it seems pretty silly for us to do exactly what he wants. So we continue to follow that policy. But I think our financial problems are so intertwined with our foreign policy. If you got rid of all the militarism, wouldn't solve all our problems, but it would be a big help because we probably could end up balancing our budget, and a lot of that money would be spent here at home instead of overseas. And maybe then we could work on domestic welfare and clean that up too. But I think the easiest thing politically is to attack the militarism overseas.
You know, I thought it was funny that between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury coming up with $700 billion and them trying to get $700 billion out of you guys in the Congress went ahead and gave the Pentagon and I guess other agencies a $612 billion appropriation earlier this week, right?
Yeah,
Where did they
this
get that
week.
money?
And, you know, they're yelling and screaming that we have to do this, you know, to bail out Wall Street. And some of the conservatives say, oh, no, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. This is a serious problem. But they all vote for this other expenditure. You know, the continuing resolution, a lot of them voted for that, and that was huge. And then there was the military budget. It was over $600 billion. So it's on and on. We've had, you know, dozens of bills this week. Everybody knows I'm going to vote against them even if I have a dollar in them because got to make the point. It's the spending there. That's where the basic problem is, and they're dealing with the symptoms and the consequences. And, you know, figuring out what to do with the failed banks is one issue, and that's important. But that's dealing with a symptom of as a consequence of all this overspending and the monetary system.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of throwing me for a loop. It's great to see you being interviewed on all these TV shows because they know that you said this was going to happen and that there must be something valuable they can learn from you. And then they bring you on and you explain that all the things that they say are the cause, rewind just one more step, you're telling them. It's the government's easy money policy that created the bubble. And they sort of seem, you know, they run out of arguments against what you're saying. They don't really know what to say to that. But it seems like it's almost impossible for you to actually teach any of these people enough that then they would use that as the basis of a question for any of their other experts.
Yeah,
it's
and
sort of like, well, that's what Ron
frank,
says. But
they're very frank about it. They say, well, we don't want to deal with, you know, what led up to this. We want you to deal now with the problem. Of course, we can. We can talk about, you know, the mistakes they're making now on you know, not allowing the market to liquidate debt and argue our case. But really, we won't get very far until they understand how the bubble came about.
All right, well, I hear you say often, and usually you have such a short amount of time on these TV interviews, and you got 4 different people interviewing you, and they don't know what you're talking about. But I think probably a lot of people in the audience don't quite get it either. So I wonder, you know, don't give us the extra long explanation, but explain what you mean when you say that the Fed's easy money policy creates malinvestment. What does that mean, that everybody starts making bad investments, and why does easy money make them do bad investments instead of good ones?